When I was a kid, I wanted a super fancy name, so I got a super fancy nickname, and it just kind of stuck. Yeah, I usually roll with a Y everywhere except for whenever I have to fill out paperwork.
Hello and welcome to RPG Research. I'm your host, Hawk Robinson, and this is our Sunday Researchers Weekly Meeting. It is June 2nd, 2019, 10 a.m. Pacific Time, and so far we have Chris. You want to go by Chris rather than Kristen?
Yeah, Chris is fine.
We have Chris joining remotely. Are you currently in Tucson?
I am currently in Tucson.
Okay, but you're going to be up in Montreal for the Serious Games Conference when?
That's the first week of July, and I'll be in New Orleans for a teaching conference next week.
Oh, cool. I'm going to be there in July for honeymoon.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, it'll be very hot and sweaty because it's New Orleans in July, but...
I thought I got the raw deal going in June.
Yeah, there's problem. We wanted to go to Ireland, but my passport, birth certificate, everything's all screwed up, and ever since 9/11, I can't. If I leave the country, I won't be able to get back in. And so we wanted to do Ireland. That would be a lot nicer in the summer, but we couldn't get the passport thing straightened out. That was one reason I was down in San Diego for a few weeks trying to get it resolved. So we figured out where could we go, and my fiance's went many years ago, loved it, wanted to go again, so we're going. And I love, I play over 20 instruments, and I love jazz and blues music, and we both love, food, so.
It's a really good place to go for that.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, food and music, we can have a good time, so.
We actually put our honeymoon off for a year so I could get my passport stuff taken care of and go. So
yeah, I've been fighting this battle since 2002.
Oof.
And I was at the State Department this September, duking it out, and still don't have it resolved. So it's all because of my dad and the military hospital and birth certificate screwed up. So nothing quite syncs up properly, so it's been nothing but a problem my whole life. And up until 9/11, I was able to get a passport year by year. Every year I had to renew. They'd only give me 1 year. And then once 9/11 happened and the Patriot Act, they've just been jerks about it. So, because I must be Soviet spy, I'm here to destroy country. Because they did not exist before I was 16, so I must be a plant.
Yep.
Я не te понимаю по-русски. Это русский отдел? Anyway, so that's really cool. I'm really looking forward to hearing about the Serious Games. I've stumbled across bits and pieces of that. I've read a few articles here and there that have come out of that group. Is it part of DIGRA or another association?
That's what I was actually just gonna look up. I don't know who they're associated with. I was basically voluntold that I would go.
Yeah, but what a great opportunity.
Oh yeah. Well, especially with my new position within the university, it fits well.
What's the new position?
I am now a curriculum and learning innovation designer. So basically,
excellent.
If you have a cockamamie idea, you get sent to me and we figure out how to do it and figure out how to research it to make sure that it works well.
Wonderful. Well, then maybe I need to extend. So I've been working on an IRB on role-playing games versus classical pedagogical techniques for teaching, right? Lecture and all of that, for pedagogical topics. So I was doing one on history, trying to figure. So it's trying to do an apples to apples comparison. So I had to pick a very narrow subset of information just to see. So it's 1600 Tokugawa era Japan history, and so I've been working with the Eastern Washington University putting together an IRB proposal to do a one-on-one comparison of a lecture versus tabletop role-playing game version of teaching that time period. And my hypothesis is that in a single setting of like 3 hours or so, the lecture is actually going to teach, people are going to retain more for a test in the short term from the lecture than the role-playing game. Because the first session, if they're not role-playing gamers, and that's assumed that they're not, they're going to be kind of stumbling through how to play the game rather than the story clicking. They'll be kind of overwhelmed. That first session is the problem.
Oh, yeah.
And even with trying a simpler system and such, it's still going to be problematic. So my hypothesis is in a one-on-one test for a single session between a 3-hour lecture or a 3-hour role-playing game, as far as covering enough content that you would need to require to cover in a 3-hour session, the lecture, as inefficient as, all the neuroscience shows, it's the most inefficient way to teach. You're not learning in layers. You don't have the self-referencing. All these things that you need for really good learning are not really addressed in a lecture. It's kind of like democracy, right? It's the worst system except for any other, right?
Yes.
I think it was Benjamin Franklin or somebody who said that. So lectures are a horrible way to learn. But when you have to fire hose a lot of information and you have very limited means of delivery, and a lot of people deliver it too, there aren't a ton of choices in a single session.
Yeah.
But then what we want to do is then try to do it on a more typical comparison of a quarter or a semester setup, where once a week you get together for 3 hours or whatever, so a 3-credit type course, and once a week you do it. And what I suspect would happen is initially the lectures went out, but over time, again, this needs to be tested. I could be completely wrong, and I'm open to being wrong about it. Over time, that the role-playing gaming version would catch up and then surpass. All of the theories say that, and the existing research does show that the role-playing game method definitely helps for longer term, right? That the applicability of it and the layering and the self-referencing and all these things, that if you test them 6 months, a year later, they're going to retain it a lot better than the lecture one. The lecture one, you're going to memorize, do the test, spit it out, and then it's gone in weeks, if not months, sooner. And it's not going to stay with you. But what happens if you do a one-on-one where you're doing a role-playing game, you're trying to cover the same number of topics as richly as possible in a lecture, video clips and trying to make it a good lecture, make it an interesting lecture, but still just a lecture, versus the immersive experience of a tabletop setting and still trying to cover all the important topics, right? You're not going to get every single little one in a role-playing game, but all the critical stuff about that time period, all the key actors, the key politics, the key world stuff going on, between the Portuguese and the Dutch and the Japanese and all. This is intentionally that time period because there's a lot of great resources. For example, James Clavell's Shogun is set right around that time period.
Okay.
It's shortly after that, and it's based on true story. It's just that the names have been slightly changed to protect the not so innocent. So in Shogun, it's Toranaga, but it's really Tokugawa in real life. And there really was a Dutch sailor who came there and lived his life there and all that stuff. When I went through my East Asian history courses, the professor who specializes in that way back in 2004 basically said that Clavell's stuff is about as accurate as you're going to find. Yes, he fills in the blanks to make it an interesting read, but it's historically well researched and supported. And so really those books, Taipan and Gaijin and Shogun and all of those are really good resources of information, a good way to learn, right? All that time period. It was how I first started to learn Japanese. I did a reading binge of Shogun back in '88 or something, and that was my first really starting to focus on learning Japanese way back when. I've forgotten most of it. I used it on and off. I learned it from other people on and off, and now my middle son's quite proficient. He had a girlfriend from there for over a year and spent time there, and he's quite fluent. But anyway, so that's been something I've been working on IRB 3W. It's been kind of on the wayside with the other stuff and the prison research stuff, but that sounds like that would be possibly of interest to see if we could work at something like that down there.
Yes, so I actually did research on I didn't have IRB approval or anything, so I can't publish it, but
right. I know how that goes.
I created a D&D course where my students would go. We would use like a very watered down version of D&D, but I had to build up other portions. But they are a core survivor group, and that they're working in groups to help their individual communities survive in this post-apocalyptic world. They're based somewhere. Actually, I think we based them somewhere outside of Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. But what happens is these different issues start to come up. They have environmental issues, social issues, government issues, and they have to deal with it as a survivor group. And what we found actually was that the students gain this incredibly deep knowledge from, like, something happens in the game and they go home and they start researching it, start
Right.
digging. Has this
Yes.
ever happened? So
It
they end up,
triggers ancillary interests like crazy.
yeah. And so like my students were testing on par with the students in the other social issues class. That's it's a seminar, so it's not like the traditional lecture, but they had this incredibly deep knowledge about the most random stuff.
How
So
many
like,
sessions was it? What duration?
it was a 16-week course. So we
Okay.
have a game day on Mondays, and then on Wednesdays we would have what we called the debrief.
Okay.
We would sit down and we would talk about what happened, and we would talk about the implications. And
Okay.
if you knew then what you know now, how would you have done this differently? And so they kind of talk about the nuances that affect like community and the nuances that affect government.
Okay. So it was a
Yeah.
hybrid. It wasn't just straight role playing. You mixed in the debrief discussion with it.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. That's definitely that's what we do with our programs to help further embed and make it applicable to their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we needed to do that as well because the university where this is taught isn't 110% on with a pure gaming setup.
Right.
They were okay with half and half,
Okay.
as long as I taught the same things as the other course.
Right.
But yeah, when I brought the information back to him, so the research was to prove that my concept worked, and
Yep.
to hopefully move towards a fully game-based
Mm-hmm.
thing. I was like, hey, look at what these kids did.
So are you familiar with Ostrokov Efterskole?
No.
That's in Denmark. They teach the last 2 years of high school. Had some great dialogue with them over the years. Again, if I get my passport straightened out, I'll be flying all over. That's one of the places they want me to come out there to document the heck out of it. Anyway, they've been for I think almost 15 years now. So it's government funded public school, although in Denmark school is a little different than here in the States. But and they teach the last 2 years of high school. They teach 3 languages, so Danish, German, and English, history, math, science. All the same courses through LARP.
Ooh.
Everything's taught through LARP. And what they do, so he gave me an example of how they do this. So at the beginning of a session, school session, a semester, whatever it is they're on, the students all come together and basically through voting and other processes eventually pick a theme and setting. And so the example he gave me and it's different every time, they decided to pick a cruise ship that would tour the world. And then everybody needed to figure out their role in running or being on the cruise ship, whether they're a passenger, the captain, the servers, the engineers, navigators, all these things to run a cruise ship, right? It's a city, it's a small floating city, and all the supplies and planning and all the legal requirements. They try to make it as realistic as possible, with interesting storylines and such, so it isn't just purely mechanical. And then so for that whole period, all of the learning was done through that cruise ship.
Oh, that's so cool.
Through a LARP experience, right? So the school becomes a cruise ship, and people do whatever their costumes out. It's very cool. So that's just one of many examples. They do many different. They do boffers and other types too, but you get the general idea. And so they've been doing that, and they're the students. You have the regular schools and the kids coming out of there, and the kids coming out of Ostrokov are on par or far above the scoring, their exit tests and everything for graduation, those who don't attend this school. So now the problem with that, as far as from a scientific perspective, is the type, it is kind of a selection bias there. So the question is, how many of these kids, maybe were gifted and talented, or, other things that may be skewing. Yeah. What's that?
naturally would choose this kind of method.
Right. So they might naturally have scored higher anyway in another school if they were properly engaged or not. I mean, again, so they don't do any other than what the schools do. They don't do any special kind of baseline testing for aptitude or anything else like that to compare and contrast and get clearer data. But at least on an apples to apples comparison, as far as what the school system channels through, they do on par or far better than the general school system. But it isn't, again, the problem is it's not rigorously controlled, so there's a lot of potential confounds, but it at least shows that it's no worse than the regular school system.
Yeah, which
right.
is always the biggest question.
Yeah, and they have a pretty good, as far as education system, their education system is pretty decent, far better than what we've got here these days, unfortunately. I remember in 1981, when the U.S. fell from being number one, like we were number one in all education, but especially math and science. And in 1980-81, it was big. It was all over the news. Japan beat us in math for the first time. That was such a big deal. Everybody was in such uproar about that. And now we're, depending upon where you look, 17 to 34th or 36th place. I mean, it's really...
Sputnik happened first and just really destroyed our concept of science and math. They beat us! How could they have beat us?
It's a lot of things. There's so many issues with the education system and a big, the public schools versus the private schools. I was fortunate enough to go to a lot of private school. And then when I did go to public school later, they were teaching stuff in 10th grade public school that I had learned back in 4th grade private school. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Even the variation from state to state. So I did
yes.
elementary school in Pennsylvania. I did middle school in Arizona. I did 7th, 8th, and 9th here. And I was in chemistry and physics in the 9th grade. I was in advanced world civilization. Like we were learning about Roman empires, and I was doing scientific experiments and writing lab reports. And then I moved to North Carolina. And none of that was happening.
Yeah.
I was in Backwoods, North Carolina, and just kind of like sitting there. I did this in the 5th grade, y'all. What are we doing right now?
Oh boy. Yeah. It's so, there's, and it is like, Idaho scores very low. Arizona, unfortunately, scores very low. Washington scores pretty well. Hi, Katie. Oh, I forgot thank you. Is it cold or is it Luke?
It might be Luke.
Thank you.
It might be cold.
So, Chris, say hello to Katie. This is my fiance.
Hello.
Hi, Katie.
Chris is currently in Arizona.
Oh, where's that?
No, you were
sorry.
fine where you were.
Oh,
actually,
okay.
she's on that. Actually, I got to fix that camera.
Oh, okay.
She probably can't see much of it.
There we go.
He'd have to
Staring
walk
at
all
a
the way
table.
to
It's
there.
cold.
But so I take it you got to go.
I do.
Okay.
And then have a good day.
Have a safe journey.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'll see ya.
She's heading back to Seattle for work and then to Germany for a week.
Oh, safe trip.
Thank you very much.
So I mean, we've been doing on the RPG therapeutic side, right? Because I have 2 organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so on the RPG therapeutic side, we've had a contract the last several months with Spokane Public School District, especially the alternative schools. And these are the kids who get kicked out of the other alternative schools. So, for example, there's Meade School District has Meade District Alternative School, and then if they don't make it there, their last chance is to come to Eagle Peak. And so it's between 4th to 12th graders. There's about 100 of them currently, and it's their last chance, other than maybe Odyssey House or something like that. But it's their last chance for normal graduation, and they really struggle. Well, Washington State just outlawed all the alternative schools as illegal segregation.
Wait,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they're shutting down all the alternative schools, putting all the kids back into mainstream population without any great resources.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we were running these role-playing game programs, so these kids come in, and it's it's always challenge by choice, so they have to pick who attends. And the numbers weren't really high, because these kids really are, right? They come, their families are so screwed up. I mean, I'm talking layperson terminology here, but so the number one problem was we had more than 20 kids who wanted to participate. Only a dozen, their parents ever completed the permission forms. The parents kept saying they wanted their kids to participate, but so many of them were dealing with so many substance issues, in and out of jail, so many issues, they never got around to completing the paperwork.
I taught Title I schools for 10 years. I totally know that struggle. Yeah,
so over a 4-month period, only about a dozen kids were able to do this particular program, when there were at least 2 or 3 times as many wanting to. But the ones who did get to attend, it was phenomenal. We did not have a single... Now, this place, again, these kids really struggle. They go on lockdown almost every other day, right? It is a rough place. These teachers, you got to love them for the effort they're putting in, because these kids really struggle. And we did not have a single incident the whole time, not a single bluff. We had one kid who was having a really bad day because bad stuff had happened all through the day, but he really wanted to participate, so he was really hanging on to his behavior. Like, he's like, I feel awful, I want to fly loose, but I really don't want to miss my session. I want to be able to do this game. And he held on himself, but then during the game, he was so tired because he'd exhausted himself holding on himself emotionally that he needed to go into the quiet room and kind of just let loose and kind of wake himself up and all that. And then he came back, right?
Yeah.
He did all this, and the teachers are just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. They usually just have a meltdown and blow up, and they would not do it. They'd come into our place and just great behavior and so engaged, and they literally like flowers, like they come in all closed and huddled and clutching themselves and not speaking, and then within a very short time they're opening up. It's just like flowers in the sunshine and laughing and having a good time. And some of them have like permanently flat affect, but then at the end when they're rating, you know, what their experience was on a 1 to 10, like the best experience they've ever had in their life, which is also kind of sad. And you know, some of them started rating them as 11s and stuff. Just like, it's not Spinal Tap, you don't turn it up to 11, but this is how wonderful it was for them. And you know, they kept coming back, and again, it then created an intrinsic motivation for them to get through the day.
Yeah.
In addition to what they were doing. And then our little side assignment to help them, the school with the funding, was they do a little creative writing at the end of each session, writing about the session, either from, you know, they could be analytical about it, they could do it from their character's perspective, their own perspective, whatever they want. It's up to them. But just a little bit of writing, which writing for them is very difficult. Many of them can barely write at all physically. So we talked about maybe doing some recordings and such, but they wanted them to actually try to do the physical writing. So that was part of the challenge they were given. But yeah, wonderful. Went very, very well. Very sad that these resources are being shut down, because this really has helped turn a lot of kids around and help them graduate. And they're not going to have the same resources, unfortunately. So, yeah. And it wasn't a money thing. It's totally, they made it illegal in Washington State as no separate but equal, right? None of that. It's segregation. Like, that's the point was that you'd go to these places, and the idea wasn't that you stay there forever. It's that you help get caught up, get back on track, and then get back into the school if you can. And for a lot of kids, that's exactly, you would create a program to get back into the mainstream school. And for a lot of these kids, that worked. They just needed that extra help and guidance for, you know, X number of quarters or years, depending upon their needs.
Well, I mean, there's pro-social life skills that they have to learn in order to survive in a classroom situation. There's a ton of skills that you can learn in an alternative school that will help you be more successful in a more traditional. Well,
they had, like, all over the walls, for example, they had empathy posters everywhere. And I'm like, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? Role-playing gaming. Research clearly shows you boost empathy through tabletop role-playing gaming. It's hard to not, it really takes effort not to build empathy in a role-playing game. Because of the nature of taking on another character, right? That automatically stretches you. And then interacting with other characters, and then the NPCs and the situations. I mean, so layers upon layers of different types of empathy and theories of mind and all these other things. That's why. And have you read yet Kohei Kato's results on his with the autism spectrum?
Yeah, so I was going through and I found the infographic, and I downloaded the paper. I have a stack of research articles that I'm going to read on the planes
Good.
over the next 2 months.
Yeah, because that was some good research he put together there.
Yeah, it was also, there's research out there. I don't know if you've ever heard of Quest to Learn. It's a game-based model. It's not necessarily fully game, but it was a school, I think in New York. I think it was in New York. But basically, it's a game-based model that they were using where students learn all of these skills and then they go into like boss battles where the whole school is trying to solve one problem. It's a lot like project-based learning.
Yeah.
But they've released a bunch of research that they've had from over the years, as well as design packs and stuff like that. So
let's go ahead and do some administrative stuff here. We've been kind of doing the open forum discussion, hoping that people would show up.
Sorry.
No, nothing to apologize. I was leading us through this conversation, so you have nothing to apologize for. Totally appropriate conversation. We were talking about what we want to talk about, but let me walk you through our format. You got the you probably haven't gotten the link because I was sending it to the research list. Let me send you the link with our typical research discussion agenda.
Okay.
So let me send this instead of to the group again. I will send it to you. Is it krys@rpgresearch.com?
It's Strange. STRANG.
Oh, Strange. Okay, that's right. Okay. All right. So this has the link to, and you have to be logged into the www.rpgresearch.com website. You've been able to log into that, right?
Yep.
Because you've been going through the training and stuff. All right. So that has the link to our typical agenda schedule. One of our staff, who is a PhD professor instructor over in the East Coast, was a little distressed by the more laissez-faire style I was taking to this. It wanted an agenda, and I was like, well, we have an informal agenda that we kind of follow depending upon who shows up. You know, it varies every session because it depends on who shows up. And so everybody's at different levels of training, so I kind of have to gauge, okay, well, if these people are here, we'll cover this topic. If these other people are here, we'll cover this topic. And to try to get everybody closer to where they need to be. Let's see here. So that went to your @RPG Research email. There might be a delay because GoDaddy's email sucks. We're working on moving over to our own servers, but that's going to be a little while. But typically, we break it into thirds. So the first third is generally the gathering and check-in and introduce, you know, because we get new people and everybody needs to say hi to. And then current institute association. So your current institute association is?
University of Arizona.
Okay. And prior RPG experience before joining us?
All over the place. I started gaming with my brother before I could even add and subtract reliably.
Right. You don't have to go over the details, just how many years you've been doing it and the kind of gaming you've been doing.
Mostly tabletop gaming. Just about 30 years now.
Okay. And why you joined RPG Research, you know, what your research perspective is.
I've been doing tangent research to what you guys have been doing for a while, and strength comes in numbers.
Yes.
I want to learn from you guys, and I want you guys to learn from what I've done.
Exactly. I'm all about open source community, and by sharing, the rising tide floats all boats. So are you having any, so next part is, do you have any administrative issues with any logins, content access? Do you need to make any schedule changes, things like that?
Not that I'm aware of. I had one question about the training. There was, well, because of I have to remember what it's called, but there were 4 videos at the beginning that talked about the neurological aspects of learning, I think it was, or something along those lines. I'm trying to get logged in. But there were no videos linked.
Yeah, I'm so far behind on all of that.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. I mean, this is my research area. I know.
Right. So what's been happening is that I don't necessarily have canned videos for everything yet.
Okay.
So these are all topics that may end up having to come up in the meeting. Let's see. So this was under. I'm seeing
was
which
that very
list.
first
Oh, there it is. Neuroscience of Learning Parts 1 through 5. Yeah. So what I've been doing is I have, about the online learning platform we have, right?
I think so.
RPG.education.
No.
Okay. So on the RPG Therapeutics LLC side, which is the for-profit separate company, RPG Research is research and community programs. Everything else, professional services, online learning, all that stuff is RPG Therapeutics. So RPG Therapeutics, and it gets confusing because I'm president and founder of both, but they are separate entities. And they offer different services, though RPG Therapeutics is based on everything we learned at RPG Research, right? Because it informs it. But RPG Therapeutics is practice and professionalism and training and all of that, versus RPG Research is the training is a means to a different end of building the research and the community programs and all of that. It's a little bit different goals. So RPG Therapeutics has a division called RPG Education, RPG.education, and we're using Moodle as an online platform because it's open source. It's not the greatest, but it's it doesn't cost licensing and it does a lot. And I started with 77 courses about 2 years ago. I had 77 courses I've been teaching for the last, it depends how far back you want to go. I mean, formally, I started doing this in 2004, but remember, I started teaching role-playing gaming in schools in 1985.
Yeah.
And so I, created some courses back then, and then they kind of sat and then came and went and all that. And so by the time I got to 2016, 17, I had 77 different courses related to role-playing gaming that I taught. Now, most of them I have a bunch of notes and a bunch of references, and then I teach it. And I may or may not have a slideshow to go with it. I often do interactive activities. So when I teach in the classroom, I tends to be more interactive. The problem is that doesn't scale. I started getting swamped back in 2014 with so many clients, and there was nobody I could hire who had the training. And I was too busy to train anybody. So I had to wrap up all the clients I had and switch to focusing more on training, which I've been doing the last number of years. And one of the things to do, because I used to work in online education with Franklin Covey back in the 90s and early 2000s, and I've been a teacher for a lot of different settings, in a lot of different professions, is trying to migrate these classes to an online platform, because then it will scale. It'll be a lot more affordable because it won't require tying up all of my time, right? Some of these classes in person cost between $1,500 to $10,000, depending on if they're 1 day or 5 day courses, and they're intensive workshops. So being able to scale it to an online platform, there's strengths and weaknesses to that, but that at least gets the baseline out to a lot more people. So the current one we've been working on, just trying to get all this working, is RPG 99. And everybody who's with RPG Research 90 days, to show that they're committed and active and not just leeching, because we started running into a few people who've joined just to leech.
Yeah.
They've been taking and not giving back at all, and then padding their resume so they can get a job and then jumping ship. We only had a few people do that, but it's happened recently, right? It's only been a problem the last 5 months. All the other previous years, we didn't have this problem. But we had 3 people in the last 5 months just basically use us and not give back at all. And that hurt. I was just like, wow. So anyway, we before we used to give everybody immediate access to the online platform, and because of that, we're trying to make sure we know people coming. Now, some people will fast track if for some reason we need them to, but 90 days it takes a little while to kind of get caught up and get your baseline other stuff, and then really you'll do a lot better in the RPG 99 course because you'll have learned much of it, but it'll fill in the gaps. It's a cohesive course that walks you through. But one of the things it opens up with is the neuroscience of learning, and because that instructs everything else, right? And it literally says, take a break every 45 minutes. You've gotten this far. You should stop now. Get up, move around, come back later. Don't try to crunch this. Bless you. Do distributed learning, not mass learning. We want this to stick. We don't want it to go. And to go to the next chapter, you have to get 100% on each quiz.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And you can retake as many times as you want. It's all self-paced learning. but you have to get 100% to move on so that we know you have your foundation. The problem is I have a tendency to do fire hoses of information. I've got all this stuff I want to share, and it's an overload. So I've been breaking these up into smaller and smaller bite-sized chunks because that's the human brain handles that better. Not everybody is as much of a sponge as I am to just soak stuff up. A lot of people need a little bit more smaller pieces there. So now there's over 100 courses because I've broken them into smaller pieces.
Okay.
And so the neuroscience of learning, that is a direct parallel to what's happening in the RPG 99 course, where I'm breaking that into 5 smaller pieces. Before it was one big chunk. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm telling people to do distributed learning and the testing effect and all these things, but I'm not doing that. I need to eat my own dog food, for crying out loud. It's bad enough that I'm not using games in this online platform. I hope to down the road as I get better with the platform, that we will gamify it more and more, because it has that ability. Even if I just do it as choose your own adventures, it has the ability to do branching logic. So we can do choose your own adventures learning for a lot of this stuff, which I think will be a blast.
And there's also H5P, which kind of helps out with that interactive aspect as well. H5P uses HTML5 to create interactive learning objects. And
right.
They
well,
just introduced the
cool.
choose your own adventure thing. Sorry.
No,
I teach on Moodle as well as.
And that's new to Moodle?
No, it's actually open.
Okay.
Any platform can use it. It goes in as an embed code, and it's actually pretty accessible. I use my screen reader with it all the time.
Cool. Are you familiar with Twine from twinery.org?
Yeah, I have friends who present all over the United States talking about Twine for education.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's another tool I use and such. So these are all interrelated.
Okay.
So anyway, we launched RPG.education a couple of years ago. Had a number of technical issues, and that was fine. We did it at a very reduced rate. Letting people know, hey, we're getting the hang of this. So normally it'd be $100 a class, but it's going to be $25 while you get to be our guinea pigs. And then that was going really well. People were really enjoying it. We had PhDs and masters and others all taking the classes from all around the world. The only one we couldn't get into the program was a fellow in Greece because PayPal wouldn't accept Greek money.
Oh, yeah, because that was crashing.
Yeah, and we could not get him into the system. It was very frustrating. And anyway, we're trying to figure out a workaround still to this day. But they really loved it, and they were really enjoying it. But they did say, can you break it up a little bit more? So, and then we had a whole bunch of systems problems because GoDaddy's servers couldn't handle the load. I overloaded them, and they blew up. And so then we had a colo. Anyway, long story. So we've been overhauling all of it. And while I was at it, I've been overhauling the course material and breaking it into much smaller pieces. So there will be, for that RPG 99, and I'm really close to finishing. I keep telling everybody, well, maybe this week. Like, I'm that close. I keep ending up having other stuff on my plate, and then the wedding coming up in July, it's getting very challenging. But there are 5 sections of the neuroscience of learning in the RPG 99 course. Now I just have to, when I do the audio and video for that course, those will be links added to those 5 parts.
Okay.
Right. You'll just have for that preparing for learning, you'll just have the audio or video, probably just audio, for this here on RPG research side. Later, when you have access to RPG 99, it'll be the more fully, you'll go into deeper depth. So that's why that's a placeholder, because I don't want to forget it.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Yep. Nope. That's all on mine. And you're going to see that in a lot of places. There's a lot of this is really progressing. You're seeing the sausage making in process. But I figure it's better to share this and get feedback with what is there and iteratively make all of it better and keep making progress than to be in analysis paralysis and always be trying to get it perfect and nobody ever sees anything.
Yeah. Right.
It's like I'm putting out there as fast as I can what I have, and then the other stuff's like, well, okay, I'll get you that as soon as I can.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pending and to be uploaded and pending, and I'm working on it. Every week those links get updated a little bit more and organized a little bit better. And part of that's from feedback from others like you. So, yeah. But anything else you're having trouble with logging in or accessing?
No, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything.
Good. Yeah, always check in on that. Okay, so You have not been through, is this your first full meeting?
I attended,
One other?
yeah, I attended one other. I couldn't figure out how to, because I hadn't gotten to the part for Jitsi yet.
Okay.
I didn't realize that I was waiting for a login email and I didn't get one. So I don't know why I thought I would get a login email. So I actually attended through Facebook, or not Facebook, YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I still got it. I just wasn't
right as interactive. Yeah. Okay. So have you been through yet the training? Again, this is something I need to create a video for, but I don't have it yet. So I've had to just take the time to teach people. One of the things you do as a researcher, which benefits you, but also helps us with the grunt work, is moving old content from the old site to the new site. And then later bringing new content. So like you've got new content coming, you'll be able to add that to the new site. Have you been through any of that, how to do that yet?
No, I have not.
Okay. This would be a great day with just you being here to help you do that. Now, okay. Are you on, what kind of device are you on?
I'm on a laptop.
Good. I just make sure you're not on your phone or something.
No.
Some people joined on their phone and they can't do much with that. So, yeah. So you know that at some point here, you're going to be writing a blog posting a month minimum.
Yes.
You're going to be writing 2 essays a year minimum, right? Roughly about 6 months apart, give or take. Generally, we don't expect the first blog posting till you're a good 30, 60, 90 days into getting the hang of everything. Some people jump right into it. Other people need more time. That's fine because this is all part-time volunteer work. We understand. These are guidelines to shoot for. Don't stress if, it's not immediately, these are not hard deadlines. If you don't make it, you're out of here. No, it's nothing like that. So it's totally guidelines because we got to have something or, nobody goes anywhere. And then once a year, participate in one or more of our larger research projects. So whether it's our prisons programs or you're doing with the educational programs, it can either be through us or through another effort. But the goal is that it needs to be publishable, and preferably, if it has IRB, so much the better. But what we're hoping is that we'll be publishing original research through RPG Research's website, freely available to the public. Right? No journal paywalls.
Yeah.
Getting real research out to everybody. We would do through Patreon where, we do the same thing we always do, which is content goes to our Patreon. We broadcast live to everybody, but then the recordings, the blog postings, all of those first go to our Patreon supporters as a thank you, because we don't have any tangible goods other than that. So we give them that access for a month before the general public, and then it becomes available to the public and free to everybody. And so that's what we want to see happen increasingly. We are hoping by next year we will actually start bringing in some grant money and start to be able to take the research we do to the next level. But meanwhile, we're just trying to get everybody trained up in preparation for that so that we're a well-oiled team who can break off into different projects, work all of us on one big project or break off into 3 or 4 different projects, whatever, and that we've all got the process down. And a lot of that is in flux. So the current process for internal peer review of blog postings and essays is pretty clunky. It's through email. It's not how I want to do it, but because we're still moving servers around, we're not doing it the way I want to do it. The way I want to do it, and the reason why we use Plone is a rich, robust, fully indexed, transactional, database-driven content management system.
Okay.
It's Python-based. It's got a very, very good security track record, but most importantly, it has completely customizable workflow. So I can set it up so that when somebody submits something to blog posting review, whoever is supposed to, whatever the logic is that we set up, gets notified by email and on the website, hey, somebody has submitted this article for peer review. Please check it out and go through it, give feedback, and then move it down the queue to the next person. So that's where we're going towards. I haven't had time to work on all of that. What we are doing as a workaround until then is it's an email process, and it is clunky. So what you do is, where the contact list is on our website?
Yes.
Okay, so pull that up. And you are volunteer number 62, correct?
I think so.
That's what it says on the contact list. So.
Okay.
Unless
Yeah,
you-
I know I'm 61 or 62. I couldn't remember which one.
It says 62. Let me know once you're on that page.
Okay, I'm there.
Okay, so scroll near the bottom, find yourself listed. So everybody below you in that name is newer than you are. Everybody above your name has been there, you know, whether it's hours or minutes or days or weeks or months or years, has seniority as far as just being with the organization. Doesn't necessarily mean they're hours, but at least duration. And what you want to do is when it's time, when you're ready to write your first blog posting, whatever the topic is, we'll come to how that works in a little bit. You will submit it to the next least senior person above you. So you know, you're the least senior for you. You go to one person more senior than you, right? They'll have a little bit more experience than you. And so, for example, in your case, so you're 62. So you got to scroll up and look for research as their primary thing. So we got researcher. So Liaquat, actually, he's withdrawn because he was demanding money. I was worried about him from Bangladesh. He kept wanting to make an income, and I'm like, that's not what we do. So look up at Ian Hunton. He's quite active. And so if you look over, Daniela is active, but she is temporarily tied up for a few weeks or a month or two getting settled. She just moved and everything. So just skip over here for now. But she would be right above you, right? Two above you. She'd be number 60. But she's tied up for the moment. Liaquat is withdrawn. So Ian would be your next that you would send to, number 58.
Okay.
Above him is David. So after you submit to Ian, and you could submit to several at once if you want, right? But it depends on how rough a draft you're sending. Usually you want to send with one person at a time each revision so that it progresses. When you get near the end, you can kind of submit it several at once because then it's more just fine-tuning.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you'd submit to Ian, and his email is there. You would submit to his RPG research email, not his public one. Okay. And then in the chat room, you might say, "Hey, I've submitted it." You know, when everybody's using the chat room, nobody is right now, but when they are, and so that's what you do. And then you wait a couple of days, and say, "Ask, please reply to let me know you've received this." You know, they don't have to reply they don't have to reply right away that they're done. They just need to let you know that they received it. You don't hear from them in a few days, like at the next meeting. That's a good chance to catch up with the meeting. Hey, Ian, I sent you an email. Did you catch it? Oh, I'm sorry, I was busy. And that's why these meetings have to happen each week, is it keeps everybody moving along with their busy lives, and they tend to actually then get stuff done by attending these meetings.
Yeah.
So that's the process. Is then you go up the chain until eventually it comes to me. So once you've got your final draft that you're really happy with, everybody else has peer reviewed it, you've gotten the feedback, you've gotten your minimum of 2 good references. Now, when I say good references, that we're not talking journal quality that, doesn't have to be peer reviewed only. For example, we had somebody doing a study on the current cultural viewpoint of video games and violence. Okay. And they did go ahead and list some good journal links, but they wanted to list the public perception in the media. And so they listed like a Daily Mail link or something like that, which is a horrible, not a good research reference, except that they were trying to point out what the hype currently is.
Yeah.
So for that purpose, it was an excellent example of the current hype. Mm-hmm. So that's a good link. Yeah. And you only need 2, right? For the essays, it's a lot more stringent. The whole point of the blog posting is to get you used to this peer review process and make it nice and smooth, and that you're getting used to doing it every month. So you just get in the habit of reading, researching, writing, peer review, posting, reading, researching, writing, review, peer review, posting, etc. To prepare you for the more challenging essay work. Yes. Right? That's going to be much longer, and we don't want to start out with a huge essay and take forever to get through the process. And so this makes it a lot easier. Blog posting is typically just 1 or 2 pages, not densely packed. You're often sharing what you are learning as you go to share with others. To go, hey, here's the topic I'm delving into. So, for example, Eric's been doing it on bleed, And so he didn't know much about bleed. He comes from a biology, chemistry background. And this is all, he's a gamer, but he mostly just gamed with his friends. So he doesn't have all this other experience. And this whole bleed thing is very fascinating to him. And so he's been learning it as he goes. And then his blog posting has been the different bits and pieces as he's learning more from Professor Sarah Lynn Bowman and others. And that's a great way to share with the general public. Makes it accessible to them. And again, gets you in the habit of doing this process. The other thing is, as you are exposed to things, I want to get you in the habit of writing down and capturing your thoughts, because you do not know what impact that may have 10 years later if you write it down. Now, if you don't write it down, there's a saying, if you don't write it down, it never happened. Right? Now, with video and stuff, that throws out askew, but the concept goes back. If you don't write it down, it never happened, right? If you have that thought and you don't capture it in some way, it's gone. It's ephemeral, right? You may never get it quite the same way. So one of the things we have you do as a new researcher is some grunt work, but it totally is to trigger all of these thoughts. So you'll go through, we'll assign you a section on the old site and have you start copy and pasting that content to the new site and getting used to that process. And you're going to get exposed to hopefully some new research. Now, it sounds like you've gotten into this pretty deeply. So for you, there may be less of it new. For others, it's all new. We have 2 researchers now who had no prior role-playing game experience at all, which is great. I love that we're getting all these different perspectives. And so let's go ahead and go through that process. What you're going to want is you're going to want 2 browsers, one on the left side, one on the right side, right? As full as your screen can handle. Okay. On the left-hand side, you're going to go to www.2.rpgresearch.com. You're going to log into there.
Okay.
And then once you're logged in, on the right side, you're going to open that browser, and you're going to already be in www.rpgresearch.com, right? That's the current site, the new one. And so the best way to do this is have them side by side if your screen will allow it. If you have to overlap them a little, it's fine. Screens. What's that?
And yay, multiple screens.
That works fine too, yeah. All right. And let me get logged into www2. So whenever you hear me say dub2 or www2, that's the one I'm talking about is www2.
Okay.
Not everybody catches that when I say that. They get a little confused. And you're going to go to Old Research Repository as just an idea of, this is kind of where we have all these links trying to help people. This is where we try to curate, but it's mostly just search tags at this point. This is a vision of what I want for the future on the new site eventually, but cleaned up and better organized. But you see the results by tag, sorted by population or diagnosis, or sorted by, social or creative or intellectual. You'll see all those different categories.
Okay, yes. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Eventually, I want all of those links to be more than just a keyword search. Like the right-hand side is all keyword searches, which is pretty good because it is a full text indexing system. If you upload a Word document or a PDF file to Plone, it ingests all that text and puts it in the database and makes it searchable automatically, which is wonderful. And so if you do the right keyword combinations in the search box at the top right-hand corner, that is your friend, right? For all research that we do, always start with the search box first on the old site and then the new site.
Okay.
But if the list is too large, right, you get pages of stuff because it's not specific enough, and doing Boolean ands and such isn't quite getting what you want, then we want to have a better curated list on the left side. So if you look on the right-hand side, all of these are just search keyword results. So searchable text equals aphantasia. If you click on that on the right-hand side, under results by keyword search, aphantasia.
Okay.
And you've got 7 items you should see, correct?
It's coming. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's something you can click through and work with, no problem. Now you see there's a curated RPG. I forgot I already put that in there, man. So there's a curated RPG research list which is, again, kind of a glimpse, kind of thinking out loud of the future of how we can try to make better than just these search links, that we will create collections. So Plone has a feature called collections that lets you create any complex logic that you want for a specific page to find the content on that page. So we can set up a logic that says, let's see, looking on this, the curated list. So you got effect, aspect, goal, profession, discipline, topic. You could literally set up a collection that adds Boolean logic for all of those topics, so that then when you click the link, you get just what is relevant for that very drilled down topic. You save people trying to have to go create their own Boolean searches.
Okay.
So I'm hoping over time we will build that up as a curated list as each of you does your area of specialty. Another way to do it that makes it simple, if you go back to the old research repository there, on the left-hand side is the alternative is tags. So you've got results by keyword search on the right-hand side, results by tag on the left side. So if you click on under discipline educator, we will get a collection of all content that is tagged with the keyword, education, educational, or educator.
Okay. Oh.
Right. And so that is a somewhat curated list in that it's only the tags rather than just raw keyword search.
Okay.
And you see that isn't tons of pages. It's a fairly good amount of results, but some of those are like David commenting on moving content. So this is as you move content, you comment to say you've moved it so that somebody else doesn't try to move it again.
Yeah.
Right. So you'll see a few of those are comments, or maybe you can't see them because maybe I have to approve them. Let's see.
No, I see them. David Jeffs on 1993 Cyberpunk.
Okay, because I see a bunch pending approval. But anyway, so you get the idea of how it is. It's a mess, but it's going. You can see, can you see the direction I'm trying to go?
Yes.
With this to try to make it useful for people over time. So what we have to do though is there's stuff on the old site that should be public that isn't, and there's stuff on the old site that is public that shouldn't be. Just over time, I accidentally, whatever, or somebody else accidentally switch the bit, etc. Now, we've never gotten in any complaints or trouble with anybody, but we go out of our way to try to be compliant and considerate of others.
Okay.
Generally, when we find content that we can't find already available, publicly available, we know it's okay to have a public, we try to reach out to the author for permission to make it public.
Okay.
Most of the authors want that. However, if it's in a journal behind a paywall, they've usually given up their rights to do so. The authors have. And only the journal can give permission, and they're not going to. So all we can do then is we can still have the full text in our database, but we can't make that available to the general public. What we can do is have a stub where it is, because sometimes we can't even list the abstract. So some journals allow us to post the abstract. Mm-hmm. Others won't even allow an abstract. They consider that copyrighted material too, that we can't even list the abstract.
Lovely.
Some of them are jerks. Some of them are really big jerks. So then all we can do is a stub, which just has a quick summary of what it's about, maybe the results. We have to create our own mini abstract and who the key people are, and a few keywords. And that's all we can publish publicly. That still helps people like you would not believe, though, because if they have university access, they usually couldn't have found that through the university access. It's buried too deeply. Yeah. Now they've found it. They can go back to the university access with the DOI number and things like that, and boom, they've got it, and that helps them.
Yeah.
But I have a longer term goal for all the ones that we can't publish, that we've gotten confirmation that we can't do, that's behind the paywall, and especially the abstracts. We will write a review. This is stuff we will be doing over time. We will write about that one. So, for example, if you, let's see, what's the best? If you type in meaninglessness in the search box and scroll down a little bit on the old site, and you'll see 1990 alienation and the game Dungeons and Dragons, and below that, analysis of the report alienation and the game Dungeons and Dragons. So the first one is the original. The second one is my writing about them. So if you take a look at those, right, you can see the original content there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is one that I believe is out in the public and such. We have to double check it, but it seems to be all over the place. But then we go to analysis of, and okay, it's got a link that I've got a web version and a PDF version. Oh crap, the links don't sync up. This is the problem between the old and the new site. Come on. No, not found. So the stuff got moved around. Darn it. Let's see. Is the PDF working? No, it's going to the old server. See, this is the problem with all the server moves. All right, I got to clean that up. Anyway, the point is you would then see my fully detailed analysis of that article.
Okay.
Which cites all of the relevant information correctly, right? It's following APA standards. It's not violating copyright, but it gives all the information that somebody's going to need. Now, it's of course through our filter, right? It's going to be filtered by us. If they want the original, they're going to need to go try to get it behind whatever, paywall, or if they have library access. But realize a lot of researchers, a lot of different universities have different database access.
Yeah.
And often they can't even get to it even through theirs.
Yeah.
By us writing this, now again, we have to earn a reputation of our stuff being of quality, but it will give them the info they need to be able to be used.
Okay.
And again, we're going to start out with internal peer review. Eventually we'll go to anonymized internal peer review. And, we've got over a dozen researchers on our staff now from around the world. And that, I hope, will just keep growing. And that will make our peer review process better and better. And, we'll keep expanding that over time so that our stuff becomes better and better quality. There will clearly be a difference between some of our early stuff and our later stuff as we get better at it. But the idea is you will read an article like this that, for whatever reason, if we can't make it public, and you will write an essay paper. And again, these are everything's challenged by choice. You find one that you want to write about. And that's typically going to be your first essay, doing a full analysis of one or two existing papers and really going through that in detail. Your next one then is going to go into more of a larger, again, it can be anything you want, but you're going to expand in complexity in what you cover. And it's, you get to guide this, right? I'm going to help suggest things, but each of you gets to pick your path as long as you're just sharing back with us, and then we share. The other thing to understand about our copyright, I don't know if you knew about this. Some people, I've had the conversation, others I haven't. The way our copyright works is you submit to RPG Research. It is RPG Research property and yours. Okay. And so that we ask that you don't publish it until it becomes live, the month after the Patreon supporters. That you hold off, but that you can publish it anywhere you want, as many times as you want. You still retain full copyright, but we also retain it so it doesn't go away. Okay. So, and I've got to write some formal terms to that effect, but that is the way we're trying to do this, to make sure that, again, freedom of information here and open source. Which, without taking it away, it's ridiculous that journals get to take away, that you have to give away your rights in perpetuity. Right? You have to write a whole new paper if you want to cover the same topic. Yeah. Learned that one the hard way. Yeah. So luckily there are open journals out there and semi-open journals. So open journals like IJRP and stuff, it's completely open. And then the semi-open ones, like after a year or so, it becomes open. And so those are great. And those are the ones that when we do something that's IRB, if we have an IRB or IRB waiver at least, we will encourage you to submit to try to get permission to be in a journal, right? We want to get into the journals, not just be in our own echo chamber. But they have to be either open or semi-open so that the content will be available to the public and that we will have a copy of it.
Yeah.
So that if that journal goes away, RPG Research is still there as an archive of all of that content. So does that make sense as far as what we're trying to do there?
Yeah, totally.
Questions so far?
No questions.
Okay. I think it's all pretty straightforward, but I have to spell it out so that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
Yeah. All right. So now you've got the, let's close out the alienation and all of that. Get back to the old research repository on the left. Now on the right-hand side, we need to go to research, archives. Yeah, go to research and archives.
Okay.
On the new server. So you see we've got public and internal private.
Yes.
Initially, we're going to move everything from the old server to the new server to internal private first, because we need to revet what, just because it's public on the old server doesn't mean it was supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
We need to double check. So you'll click on internal private and you'll see RPG research and others research. So RPG research means it's original content that we have created.
Okay.
So for example, that analysis of would go in RPG research.
Yes.
The original alienation of goes in others research.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yep.
And does it
totally
seem self-explanatory when you saw that? Would that have been kind of what you would have guessed?
Yes.
Okay. And then so if you go to others research, you'll see we list it by date by default. By the year. So you'll see every title starts with a year, and that makes sorting. So this is, I think this is a collection. It might not be. I think this might just be a folder. I think it's just a folder. So this is where we put everybody else's research. Yeah, this is where we put it. And later we create collections that can be the different search terms and things that we want to have different results. And we'll get into that. You probably won't learn that today, but it's one of the many powerful features of Plone. By the way, we may be moving off of Plone to Django at some point. But,
okay.
But we have to really test that out, and that might take a year or more. So just a heads up, we're evaluating that. These things kind of have to move a little slowly. For now, we're sticking with Plone, but even though it has some issues. But the security's great. What's that?
So do you say it's moving forward slowly to somebody who works in higher education?
Oh, yeah. Compared to that, yeah, we're moving lightning speed.
Oh yeah.
I've had to deal with that. They tried to hire me at EWU to be the director of I can't remember. It was like director of technology relations or something. It was a custom made position, and they thought I was perfect because of my enterprise background and my teaching background and everything else. And basically they wanted the school, like a lot of schools, is this hodgepodge of a gazillion different systems, and it's a mess. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to get everything kind of cleaned up and everybody collaborating and working together and all of this. And so they wanted me to come in and do that and go to every department, every teacher, find out what all the boxes were they were running, what resources they had, what they needed, put it all together, and then try to get everything, standardized to the CTO's goals. Mm-hmm. And I've done that for multinational corporations before. And I've done it for small junior colleges and stuff before. So this was, I was one of the few people who had prior experience doing all of this. But my experience with colleges and both universities and small colleges is the freaking politics I can't stand. I love teaching. I love teaching. I love seeing the light come on and inspiring people and all of that. But do not send me to the administrative building. I can't stand the admin building.
Yeah, we call it Area 51 at my school. So.
And so I was at the third interview. It was the final interview. They had like a dozen people there between the CTO and the dean and all these people, and they were really excited. But I really had my concerns about the position. I really was worried it was going to be too much a political position and not as so much technical, right? And so as I grilled them, and they were really trying to hedging around it. Every time I tried to ask them if it was a political thing, like, well, really, it's more this and this, and I was like, I'm not getting a straight answer here. But eventually, after 2 hours into this third interview, it became very clear it was going to be a nightmare. It was going to be a cluster bleep.
Yes.
Of just because they wanted somebody who could handle not ruffling feathers and make all of this work. Get everybody to just get along.
Oh.
And I was like, I am not the person for that. I have very big boots. I am excellent at stepping on toes. Whether I mean to or not. Oh my goodness, can I step on toes? And I get things done. I definitely have a track record of that. But if you want somebody who's not going to step on toes to get things done, I am not your person.
Yes.
So that was how I summarized the when they finally said, so we really want you, what do you say? And I was like, well, it sounds like you want somebody who doesn't step on toes. Yes, exactly. I'm not your person.
Not it.
You know, I am not a good fit for this. If you want things to get done, I'm the person. If you want somebody who doesn't step on toes, you got to find somebody else. And you will never, this will never work. Whoever takes this position, if they can't step on toes, you will never achieve the goals you have laid out in your scope here. And they're like, oh, okay. And so they still tried to convince me, and I'm like, no, this is a disaster. So they have gone through half a dozen people in that position since. That was like 10 years ago.
Oh, I bet.
And they still have no progress. It is a total scapegoat position, and it's all because of politics.
Yeah.
That's one of the other things we're trying to do here with RPG research. You know, we want to be a research institute, right? 5 days a week we're research, 2 days a week we're community, and that informs back into the research because we see what happens in the wild, and it gives us new ideas. And it's important we stay connected with that, not get stuck in a research bubble only. Always see what happens in the wild. But one of the things that has happened, I can't tell you how many of these people, it doesn't matter whether they're bachelor's, master's, PhD, postdoctoral, they have gone to their various universities and tried to do a research topic that involved role-playing gaming from a certain perspective, and their university has said, no, that doesn't represent us.
Yeah, had a similar experience.
What's that?
I said, yeah, I had a similar experience.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's universal. What's that?
I told you about my PhD. I went in to research the D&D course that I created, and they were like, no.
Your story, it is across the globe. I have heard this over and over and over again. Now, we are in a way the same way. We are not going to do research studies on, genomics studies or something, right? Unless that's to do with the genes of role-playing gamers. We are not going to do a genomic study. We are not going to do a study on the ancient, Anasazi or something like that, unless somehow it's related to role-playing games or music. If you want to do a research paper or whatever on the history of role-playing games or music and the neuroscience of that, or whatever whatever discipline you want to come from, that happens to involve the Anasazi or something, great. That is a relevant research topic. But we are going to stay focused on, music and role-playing games as the two main things. And the music it's only kind of on the side. The only reason it even still gets included is because the programs we have found using cooperative music is a great icebreaker and baseline for teaching cooperative thinking for people who have never experienced it before.
Oh, yeah.
Working together cooperatively in a drum circle, for example, teaches concepts to people that have only been in competitive environments prior to this. And it makes it easier for them to then understand working together in a tabletop role-playing or other type of setting.
Oh, cool.
And so that's why that keeps coming up, and why we do it both in our programs and our research. And, music is a powerful modality. There's lots of research to that. But we don't go as deep on the music side. Anybody who wants to is welcome to. Again, I'm passionate about music as well. I'm both a music and recreation therapist, and I play over 20 instruments and all of this. And so I'm convinced about the power and effectiveness of it. But they are technically two different topics, even though we do use them sometimes, interchangeably.
Okay.
And certainly using different music to enhance the tabletop role-playing game experience needs to be considered. That's in my RPG optimization list, etc.
Yeah.
Have you seen the RPG optimization page?
I haven't.
Okay.
After taking my time off for
Yeah,
grandmother, I haven't.
that's okay.
I remember what I've looked at. I've gone through the very first list and the second. I just haven't gotten very
Well, I
far.
don't know if I have linked. I don't know if I have it in the training list yet because it's a mess. It is the content for a book basically. It's a lot of stuff. Again, it's like so many things here. They're
Okay.
bits
Yeah.
and pieces, but it informs much of what we do both for our research and our community programs. And so let me see if I swear I made
Okay.
a new page. I'm pretty sure I moved it to the new site, and I don't want to give you the old one if it's on the new one. Okay, so what I've done is I've set up a new section on the new site, moving it over section by section, but it doesn't look like I have moved the big page over. I'm trying to break it into smaller pieces. Let's see. Yeah, so on the new site, there is a section if you type in optimization, all about that. But on the old site, if you type in optimization,
Okay.
and you can either scroll to the bottom of the list and it says notes from experiments on RPG optimization.
Okay.
And you'll see, if you look at just the table of contents on the right hand side, you'll see it's massive.
Holy crap. Okay.
It is, I mean, just the primary heading topics go to 40. That's 40 chapters basically.
That's amazing.
Now, I have not filled out much of this. I have the data on my computer from all this, but turning it into web format is a very long, time-consuming process. But you can see the placeholders for all this stuff that I have, and some of it's filled in, some of it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've done is on the new site, those chapters now are separate pages, and I'm slowly filling them in bit by bit. This will be a book at some point, maybe. It's certainly the potential.
Yes.
And it draws both from my over 40 years of experience and in gaming, and from 2010 to 2012, I had more than a dozen groups. I had more than 120 participants for about a year and a half, 2 year period, 1 to 2 years.
Oh wow.
These were non-therapeutic settings, just trying to try to get the highest participant enjoyment scores.
Okay.
So pretty, but there's so many variables. And I had each of them playing different games and settings and sessions. And then I played with things. So that way I could try to figure out some of the confounds between different systems versus universal. So all 12 groups played a different game system.
Oh man.
I also did this because of money, because I was using all my own books. I did not have 12 sets of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition.
I don't blame you.
But if you see the library behind me, I have to fix the camera so you can, but you've probably seen my library behind me. I have many different game systems over the decades. So that I just made a crate. I filled a crate for each group that had all their character sheets and forms. They all did baseline assessments, all of this. And then that crate was an entire game system ready to go and a campaign and everything. And I could do that in 12 different crates, no problem. 12 to 15. Yeah. And so then over that 1 to 2 year period, everybody at the end of each session would fill out a participant, enjoyment score, where it scored, etc. And, there's always variability, how good a game I did, etc., etc. There's so many potential confounds. It's not something I can publish. I still think I need to write a book about it, though.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm certainly sharing it, right? This is all publicly available. But the variables I started to play with were, for example, as simple as like room temperature. I set the room at 80 degrees versus 60 degrees, 74 degrees versus 64 degrees, things like that. Yeah. I could consistently see a change in the scores, the enjoyment scores across all groups.
Oh, that's really cool.
Right? 1 to 2, 3 points in their enjoyment level.
Yeah.
Yeah, no IRB. I can't publish any of this, but I can certainly share my experience with everybody else to help others make a better gaming experience.
Yeah.
Lighting. I did all kinds of things with lighting, mood lighting, bright lighting, etc. Ambient noise, whether I added sound effects or not. screens at the table, whether I allowed cell phones or not, or big screens or laptops or tablets, or I used a projector, or I used a table on the, I used a flat screen on the table as a battle mat, all kinds of different options. Tried all of these different experiments to try to optimize the experience and see what happened. Now, as an experienced GM, a lot of the stuff you see, you can kind of go with your gut when it's working and not working.
Yeah.
But that's not good science.
No.
So the only measure I really had to go on was people's feedback on how good a session it was over time.
Yeah.
So, and unfortunately, this all predates me having other staff. So all the releases everybody signed says that they released, to let me do this research and crunch the numbers and record the video and everything else. But they don't technically say anybody else on the staff, because at the time it was just me.
Yeah.
So I have a problem of like, well, I probably technically could share this, but I probably better play it safe. So all I can do is try to share, put it in the aggregate, but not share the raw, right? Keep the raw data on my laptop where I'm the only one who, sees it, but put all the aggregate data and share that with everybody as I have time to do that.
Yeah.
And then hopefully people will then try to repeat these experiments under more controlled circumstances and prove, disprove, negate, whatever.
Oh, cool.
And I hope we will do that. I hope now that we have a staff growing, that we'll do the exact same experiments on a much larger scale and with better controls. So consider it an early trial. What's that?
I for the environmental part of my D&D class, I started using cicada noises and cricket noises.
Yes.
Just very low first, and then as the environment begins to deteriorate, the sounds become louder to mimic like more and more being around you.
Okay.
Yeah, entire hours of listening to those noises as you're trying to make these important decisions. The students are looking at me like, why are you doing this to me?
It's fascinating. Have you ever been to Oklahoma or in that region?
Yeah.
Do you notice they call them locusts, but
yeah.
I don't know that they are locusts, but they call them locusts. So I thought it was like electrical power lines zapping. Right? There's this constant everywhere, right? I came into the state and like, what is that noise? And I'm shouting, like everybody I'm talking to, like, what is that noise going on here? And like, why are you shouting? Because everybody there has just tuned it out, right? Our brains are able to selectively tune things out that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it was months before I was able to really start to filter that out when I was working on a contract there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I do that with students. It's great. I love it.
Toy with their minds. But anyway, that's an important one for you to bookmark because it's got great info and suggestions for info. And if you need something more specific, that might inspire me. Give me a 15 minutes to go whip up an up-to-date page with more of the info that would help you if you have an area that you're interested in. So these are all things that I did and I have on my laptop or I have in a file cabinet. Optimizing the size of the groups, right? I've run groups anywhere from 1 player to over 20 players at a table.
Oof.
And the techniques necessary to make that work in different ways. 4 to 5 is the sweet spot. Mm-hmm. We all kind of knew that, but I really needed to test it, and it really shows up in the numbers. Here's the one that is the most hotly contested that I've been lambasted about. Screens at the game table. Especially like smartphones and stuff.
Yeah. And now with modern gaming, you can do everything with a screen in front of you, but it takes away so much from the table.
Well, and it's very fascinating, and I want to. So you're also interested in the neurological aspects. So I would love to hear your conjecture on this because all I have is conjecture at this point. Here's what I noticed consistently, and this has been repeatable for me left and right. If I don't allow screens at the table, except for maybe the GM having his laptop behind the screen, but I don't allow anybody else to have their smartphones have to be muted, put on stun and put face down or put away, but no screens face up. Versus even allowing just one person, again, I tested this over and over and over again this way, one person to have their smartphone out face up, that occasionally even on mute is, showing something on the screen, or letting one person to have their PDFs that they could pull up just their PDFs only, right, for the game. Whatever the reason, everybody had different excuses. But even just one person, that person with the phone typically scored 2 points lower on the participation scores, right? I typically got between 7 to 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. Most of my participants enjoyed my games. I've gotten a reputation as a GM. I've been a paid GM since 1983, right? I was 13 and my youngest player was 17. Everybody else was college level on up, and they were paying me to GM them at 13 years old, right? I was like, I can't believe this is happening. This is awesome. But so I've gotten a reputation. You know, there are better GMs out there, but I got a reputation as a good GM, and people were willing to pay. And I had 2 groups on Saturday, 1 on Sunday way back then. So people like to be in my games. There are some people who don't like my style, and that's always going to happen, but the majority seem to like it a lot. So typically the participation scores, I would get 7 to 10 is typically session scoring that I would get. Interesting thing that happens over time, though, is that would over time kind of come down because it raised the bar to, it became average for them. So it'd start to get down around 5 to 7. This is another confound I had to watch out for. I saw across all the tables, the scores getting a little lower, and I wondered if it was something I was doing wrong with my campaigns. But then in conversations and interviews, what I found out was that they were just finding that all the other games they went to, they didn't enjoy as much anymore compared to my game level. And that they were now grading over time on a 1 to 10 on the bar I had set. So what was a 10 became a 5, even though it was the same level of enjoyment. It became the average range for them because that was the sessions they were having with me.
Yeah.
And they were finding, they would rate the others like 2s and 3s, even though initially they'd come in and they'd rate the other groups as, 4, 5, 6, 7 compared to my 10. And then later they would rate those same groups 2s and 3s and 4s and give me a 5 or a 6. So that's another confound to watch out for over time, right? And these are all things you have to watch out for with test and retest and all that. So you have to take into account that curve that was happening, that trending. That was another one that made it so complicated. Oh, so many variables. But anyway, let's just stick with the, whatever 10 is, we'll stick with the 10. Whoever had the phone there in front of them typically scored 2 points lower on their enjoyment of the game. Everybody else at the table typically scored about between 1 to 2 points lower, sometimes a little less than 1, but basically around 1 point lower. Everybody else at the table had less enjoyment because of one person having their phone at the table used intermittently. Not constantly, intermittently, and used in an approved way.
Yep.
Then add everybody having their phones at the table. Everybody's scores dropped. 2 to 3 points. I tried this with tablets. I tried it with laptops. I tried it with people only doing it for, for the game to help them because they wanted to track their character that way. Whatever the reasons, there's a gazillion excuses people give. I've heard them all. Now, accessibility is the one approved one, right? If they need to use the screen reader, the voicing, the dice roll or whatever, that of course is totally appropriate.
Yeah.
And I've had mixed results of that because for the person who needs for the accessibility, it helps enhance their experience. But it did have a tendency to detract from the other players, unfortunately. It was distracting for them. So, we tried to figure out other more analog methods to reach the same needs. Because for whatever reason. So here's the question, and I wonder if you ever, and keep your eyes and ears open for this. My conjecture is that our brains, when we interact with a 2-dimensional video type surface, not a 2-dimensional battle mat that we draw on or a piece of paper that we draw on, that when we look at a computer screen, a laptop screen, a phone screen, etc., our brains in some way is having to process differently than when we interact with the analog world, if you will. Yeah. And I have tried this with projections onto the battle mat, overhead projector. I've tried it with a flat screen on the table, and still had the same effect as having a phone or laptop at the table, negative effect. Got to be careful about terminology. Reduced scoring of participation enjoyment from any of these digital enhancements. And I'm a big tech advocate. I believe technology can do wonderful things. I couldn't have achieved being CTO and CIO without technology because of my dysgraphia and other LDs and such. Technology saves my bacon. If it wasn't for day planners that beep at you, like I tried using day planners for years, but I always forgot to look at them because I have ADHD. And if they didn't beep at me, I would keep missing really important appointments. Once I had an electronic day planner that beeped at me and told me to look at the next appointment, wow, I started to get my stuff together.
Yeah.
So I believe technology, when used appropriately, can greatly enhance quality of life in so many ways, including games.
Yeah.
But this has been a particularly confounding, pardon the pun. Now, AR and VR so far, the experiments I've done with that have been very mixed. Those have been different.
Yeah, but I think you're dealing with something different with AR and VR.
Yes. It is a different immersive experience.
Yeah, I was going to say the immersion's different.
Exactly. But I have mixed results. I don't have consistent results. I have some people it really helps, other people it really detracts. And it's all, so my scatter plots are all over the place, which is basically the same as random, right? I don't have any good correlative data to say, yes, this helps. It's all over the place.
Yeah. Now, I know there's a ton of research that's happened over the past few years as far as college classrooms go
Yes.
that talk about even if one person in the whole place has their laptop open, their scores are lower and so are the scores of the people all around them, even if they
Really?
can't see the screen. Yeah, I was actually just trying to find the article. I know it's the basis of a book called Teaching Naked or Naked Teaching. I always get it mixed up. But yeah, the premise was that they noticed that scores were lower when students had their laptops open, and so they just basically said no laptops, and noticed an uptick because students are engaging differently with the instructor, engaging differently with the content.
That being said, how much do they control for? Because this is what I've seen at universities too often, and I can't believe people waste their money this way. Most of the people I saw on their laptops had their word processor up to take notes, as I did, but were spending most of their time on Facebook, Twitter, what have you, and kind of half listening, and then switching back to the Word document as they heard something that caught their interest.
Yeah.
But most of the people, because I usually sit in the back so I can observe everything, and I saw all these screens up, and most of them were doing other things.
Yeah, no, I don't remember off the top of my head. It's been a while since I've read that one.
Right. I'd be curious to know that if they controlled for that, because certainly people who did that at these sessions, their scores were much lower. And of course, it impacted everybody else even worse. We literally had somebody at one of our conventions. I couldn't believe she did it. She was one of our game masters, but then she was playing. People got upset with her, and so we had her switch to a player. She literally was playing a video game while at the table while playing.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was StarCraft or something like that. And we're like, what are you doing? And it was completely distracting everybody. She's like, well, I got headphones on. Or I got one earbud in or whatever. I need to do it. It helps my ADHD and everything. I'm like, I'm ADHD. Don't give me that crap. I've worked with tons of ADHD. Yes, it can help to have some background distraction here and there, but you're playing a full freaking video game at a tabletop role-playing game session. That is just completely inappropriate. Do not give me that baloney. This is not an accessibility thing. You need a fidget spinner or something, we'll talk, but...
The very first 5e experience I had, we had somebody who was playing one of those stupid tap games. Like, I think it had something to do with chickens, but he's sitting there, like, tapping for all he's worth and trying to role play while we're playing, and I'm like, really, man? Really?
Yeah,
okay.
It boggles my mind, the rudeness of some people. Just like... So anyway, I don't know if it was directed at me or not. It seemed like it was because I got added in the comment. This is a Twitter thread a few months ago that got a lot of traction. And it was a woman claiming that those people who exclude, because I've been recommending it left and right, to not allow smartphones at the table unless you have specific accessibility needs, that it's male gatekeeping not allowing smartphones at the game table. And I'm like, what? Okay, that's a new one. Explain that one to me. How did that become that? And she says, well, mothers have far more responsibility than fathers, and everybody's contacting the mother and not having the phone there at all times to answer the needs of their children and friends and coworkers and etc., is excluding them from the game table. My argument is you need to unplug for 3 hours of your day to have your game session. This is common courtesy. I understand about accessibility. If you need it to use it for accessibility reasons, and she tried to argue that this was an accessibility issue. I'm like, oh my goodness.
As somebody who needs supports, no.
Yeah, well, and this hurts people who need accessibility. When you have people do this, then dilute the value of accessibility considerations, you end up hurting those who really need them when people make these kind of facetious arguments.
Yeah. Oh, so I teach a course on gaming myself, and we talk about gatekeeping to different games. Like,
Sure.
especially in recent years with LGBT stuff and all of that, like there's a certain level of gatekeeping that happens with that, and gatekeeping as far as limited access goes. Sure. And that's the first time I've ever heard that one.
That was a
come
new
across.
One. Well, yeah. Now, I did a pilot study and then another study, more formal one, in 2013 and then 2015 on experiences of gender bias in gaming community and industry. Do you know about those studies?
Yes, I've seen those.
Okay. Well, you haven't seen all the details, but you've seen the summaries because I'm still trying to finish the report. And so 2013 was, all local regional stores and local gaming convention, etc. Got 164 respondents. I got 24% qualitative responses in addition to the rest of the quantitative, which is awesome. And then in 2015, I did it at Worldcon 73. So we got a bunch of international people added to the list there. I only got 120 something respondents on that and only about 21% qualitative because Worldcon was so well run, there weren't any queues, lines of people.
Oh, okay.
Because the way I did it is I walked up with a handful of clipboards and said, have you ever been involved with role-playing gaming of any kind, tabletop, live action, computer-based, or solo adventure books? If they said no, I was like, okay, never mind, go on to the next person. And if they said yes, this is the screening question. I said, would you be interested in doing a survey on a related topic? And almost everybody would say yes if they said yes to the first one. And that was just random, right? It was, yes, there's the selection bias of being at a sci-fi convention, but pulling people off the street to ask, this is actually a more appropriate use of the time to find people who are going to role play because it was about role-playing game experiences. So for example, out of like 500 people approached, 230 said yes to the screening question, but about 100 of them, this is at Worldcon, were in transit to the next event. And so they wanted, they asked for a card or something to get back to me. They were interested, but they were going to the next event. The only time I really got to go to a line on Worldcon was at the last session on Sunday when they were all lined up for George R.R. Martin, and everybody was waiting for his big thing there. And so that's where I got like the last. So I'm there for 4 days, and it takes me 3 days to get about 60 something respondents. And there's over 4,300 people at this convention. The last day, the last session of the last day is when I got the other half of respondents because it was the only real line. Now, again, statistically, it was really great because people, if they were in a line, they were happy to do, like, I got nothing to do, I'll fill this out. Back when I was at the other con, at SpoCon and the others, they had lines all over the place. So that one was really easy. It was in a much shorter time and a lot less hassle. But that one and I wrote all this down, like I tracked the number of people I approached and the people that passed the screening question but still said no. At SpoCon, only 3 people said no that passed the screening question to filling out the form. Then I had to remove 1 or 2 because somebody got angry about the substance of the question. This is in 2013 before Gamergate. And they didn't finish it because they were angry about what it was asking about experiences of bias. And then 1 other didn't get, 1 or 2 others didn't get completed fully. So there were a few I had to remove, from the qualified list. The interesting thing is Worldcon, I did get a lot more no's because they associated it with Gamergate, because that was 2015. That was a year after Gamergate. So Gamergate was a hot button issue. And also Worldcon, they were having the big puppies issue. The happy puppies, sad puppies, you know anything about that?
Just from student reports.
Okay. Yeah. So it was a whole thing back then. And so it became, so before people, it wasn't an emotionally charged issue. I mean, you know, people have personal experiences, but I had a bunch of people said, oh, this is probably because that Gamergate thing. No way I'm going to fill that out. Right. As soon as they started to see the question. So that I had a higher rejection level because of Gamergate, right? It changed what people were willing to actually do to even just fill out the assessment, which was interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, that's the real gatekeeping stuff, right? Where you have the experiences that people write about in this survey show where the gatekeeping was happening. And it's all forms. It was tabletop role-playing, live-action role-playing, electronic role-playing gaming, solo adventure books and modules, wargaming, and collectible card games, tradable card games, all of those. And then it also differentiated between the industry versus the community.
Okay.
So it was like 11 big questions. There should be on the website the actual questionnaire in there on the website to look at. And so some really great data. Now I've learned the hard way how that detailed an assessment form is a lot of freaking work to report on.
Yeah.
It's so many variables because they cross-reference everything. Because we got their gender, we got their like general regional location. We got some really good data on that. We did get an IRB waiver on the second part of that, so we're able to use the other as the pilot and self-reference it and all of that. So it's really awesome data. The gist of it is the electronic role-playing game world and collectible card game world scored very high on experiences of gender bias and exclusion and harassment and all of that, including artwork and you know some of it was the industry, some of it was the community, but it was across the board, both the video games and the collectible card games, very high scores. Yeah. Tabletop and LARP were much, much, much lower, but still, you know, higher than we'd like to see. Wargaming, none, but not a single female or other gender filled out wargaming, only males.
Wargaming was never something that I ever tried to get into. I know from tabletop there were some experiences with gatekeeping.
Really no, there's a little bit, but it was greatly a lot less than collectible card games and the video games and such. And then what else was there? Anyway, but you get the idea. It's really interesting. It's some really good numbers, and then the qualitative stuff explained why they said what they said, which is awesome. And I just need time. I need a couple of weeks of things running smoothly that I can just focus on finishing that report because it'll be great. I got to do it because the IRB waiver is going to expire, and then that won't be good. Okay, let's go ahead. I've been on a bunch of tangents here, but it's all stuff to bring you up to speed and make sure that you're in the loop on. So let's see if we can find a section here that nobody's moved yet. So the way we're going to do this, at some point I'll be assigning you sections. Let's go back to old research repository, the page. And let's go to overall research archives.
Okay.
And then let's go to primary archives, which I think all of this has been moved on the first list, but we'll double check. Primary list of documents for research on RPGs. And then archive documents listed in order by publication date. So we're drilling down. All right. And there's about 4 pages of stuff there. I don't like this particular view. Why is it in this view mode? Let's see if I can change that to summary view. Try refreshing the page and tell me if you now see it in a different, because before it was with columns. I think you need to see it in summary view. Does refreshing fix that? Okay, good. I just changed the default view. All right, now you can actually see like the summary of it. It's not telling me, it's not showing me if there are comments on it, so that's unfortunate. Let me see if standard view changes that. We had a version. Oh. I don't show me comments. I probably should modify the tabular view to show whether there's comments or not, but I don't want to mess with the old server, so all content. Oh, that's massive. That's got, holy crap, it's got the table of contents for each one.
Yes.
That might be problematic. All right, let's go back to summary view. All right, if I click it. Okay, so it's going to be a little tricky, but I want you to just practice this. So hold the control key down while you click on the 1979 Fantasy and Psychiatric Patient. You can refresh the page again, by the way. Fantasy and Psychiatric Patients Exploring Myth, and then left click on that while holding the control key down.
Yeah, it opens up a new tab.
New tab, exactly. Now, if you scroll down, you'll notice there's comments that says Move to New Archive by Eric.
Yes.
So you know you don't need to worry about this one.
Okay.
So close that tab. And I suspect all of this has already been moved, but I'm not certain. Let me jump to the end on the last page 4. Let's see what those look like. What's that?
So that's what I was just doing.
Yeah. Nope. It is not all been moved. So I got to figure out where we are at on this. So I can give you a block to work on. So I'm going to go to page 2. See where we're at around 1999.
The end of page 3 hasn't been converted either yet.
Yep. And I'm at the beginning of page 2. Let me jump ahead to about 2004. One's in French. That one's been moved. Go to 2007. That's been moved. Again, we're assuming we're not missing some. 2008. Hoping everybody's been consistent. At some point, I'll need to just click through all of them. Okay, 2008 has not been moved. Let's see if there's any of these other 2007s that have not been moved. That one is not. Okay, we're zeroing in. So it looks like the first 2007 has been. Second one, excuse me, has not. All right, so the second 2007, which is, oh, darn it. Now I just jumped. I closed the wrong tab. Let me get back to there again. And again, we have a lot of other subfolders to go through as well, but this is the more organized one, right? Because we've actually structurally been going through it by date. So at least there's some consistency here. All right. So the potential benefits and deficits of role play. Okay, so this is actually one for me. Mm-hmm. This is one of ours. So this would not go in the others folder. And we need to check, because since I did do it, it may already exist anyway, and we should still tag it if it has been. So on the right-hand side browser, let's go to Archives.
Go into RPG.
Public, because this will be under RPG Research. Because any of the RPG Research stuff that we did, if it's public, it's public. Right? If it's public on the left, it's public on the right. Let's get rid of the portlets there. I don't need portlets on this page. Come on. All right. Biography chronologically. Okay, that page is not doing anything.
The bibliography page doesn't have it listed either.
Yeah, they're not. Those are not properly set up yet. Those are all placeholder pages, darn it. All right, so much to do. So much on the to-do list. Go back to archives. We'll just go to private. Actually, here's an easier way. Let's see the title here. Roll up.
The potential
All right, RPGR A0002. Put that in the search box on the right. Oops. Okay, it is not on the new site because all there is a link to it from an amalgamation page. So on the right hand side, let me see if there is even a folder created for public. It's all, these are all sorted. Repository. All right, research, public, repository. This is where the actual files go. The others are all collections. Oh, there's nothing in there. All right, so we're going to let you do a little practice here.
Okay.
And I'll give you a whole block once we get through this process. So on the left-hand side, go ahead and highlight the title and Control-C to copy into memory.
Okay.
Now on the right-hand side, you see there's a black navigation, and you're in the folder Archives Public Repository, right? Yep. Okay. You're going to do Add New. You see that?
Yep.
And Page. You'll notice I've got an object there for peer-reviewed page. That's for the future. That's a custom. See, I can create custom content really easily with this system too, which is really great. All right, so there's the title. So go ahead and Control V in the title.
Mm-hmm.
Then go back to the left, and there's a summary. It says by W.A. Hawks Robinson. It's all in bold there. That's the summary. So Control C on the left, and then come back to summary on the right, and Control V to paste.
Okay.
And then you're going to grab the rest of it. So the potential benefits and deficits role-playing gaming on down. You got to be careful with this because you don't want to grab too much because then you'll get a whole bunch of like menu stuff. But you got to go all the way down to the citations, which has a big gap. But you want to stop where it says rpgstudies.net. You want to stop there. You don't want to go all the way down to file under and end up grabbing those tags. You don't want to grab those tags. You've gone too far. Once you've got that highlighted, hit Control C. By the way, to make it easier to read on the right-hand side, when you're editing something, you can hit Control-Shift-F, and that gives you a full screen editor, or full browser editor.
Okay.
You see that?
Okay.
And you can go back by doing Control-Shift-F to go back. So then Control-V to paste, and it should just copy it. Now, if the formatting looks okay on the original, then it will probably be okay on the new one, although it looks like the Creative Commons image didn't transfer. That's not a big deal, since it was missing anyway. But look through it. You want to... Now, what I recommend you do to make the use of your time is go ahead and read it.
Okay.
If it's typos and stuff, don't worry about it because that ends up being more of an edit than we want you to do. So don't read it at that level of detail. But read it because it might inspire you for your blog posting topics or your essays down the road.
Okay.
And you can skim it if you want, but you're looking for broken formatting. So, for example, the formatting in here is badly broken.
Yes.
As you can see. And that will happen a lot.
Okay.
So where it says have provided and then it jumps down to some interesting data.
Uh-huh.
So you can hit delete and then space, so you put a space between provided and some.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to clean up that. Now, this does have the ability to do an export import bulk, but every time I do that, stuff gets munged far worse.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why the old site's such a mess is because I had other revisions that I did bulk export imports, and they didn't survive the version changes cleanly. And we got to clean that up now. What's that?
I said, yeah, it's a meat grinder. We use it with LMS conversions.
Yep. It
doesn't work out so well.
The best thing is manually copy and paste. And as a researcher, you will benefit because you will be seeing this information.
Yes.
As you go through it. So it's grunt work, but it's useful grunt work. So you'll go through. Now, don't worry about fixing all of it right now. Just fix a few of them. Then Control-Shift-F to get out of full screen editor mode.
Okay.
Scroll down. Or actually go to, sorry, before you, well, actually, it's better to save it first. So then go ahead and save it.
Okay.
And now you should have, it's a non-published version. It's a draft version. And it's not ready to be public because it needs to be cleaned up. So you can leave it. It's in red is how you can tell it's still private. Now, staff can see it, but the general public can't. Go ahead and go back to edit it now.
Oh, no.
Because
That's
usually what I
common.
like to do is save that first, the content first, and then in case I screw up or the connection drops, I don't want to have to start all over. There is a way to link an external editor, by the way, so it can sync between your desktop and here, but that's more complicated. Go to settings, get default and then settings.
Oh, I scrolled. Where? Oh, wait, what? Where's default where?
Okay, so you're editing the page.
No, not yet. Oh, there it is. Edit.
Okay.
I was looking at edit.
Yeah. Okay, so they go click on settings. Allow discussion. I'm going to set it so it's always defaulting to yes. I don't know why it isn't right now, but go ahead and set that to yes. Allow discussion. I think no value means it doesn't override. So it probably allows anyway, but just in case, set it to yes.
Okay.
We do not want to exclude it from navigation, so leave that unchecked. Short name. So if it has a really long title, as this one does, that short name is part of the URL. So if you look at the URL currently, it's really long, right?
Yes.
So you can, because this has been given an RPGR code. It's our cataloging code that is less than perfect, but we're working on it. You
Okay.
can make it, we like to start with the date. So 2007 dash RPGR dash A00002.
Okay. And delete the rest.
And then delete the rest. Yeah. The short name doesn't, you don't need all the rest of that for the URL.
Okay.
Versioning should always be enabled so that you can always roll back to the previous edits. By the way, all of these pages are also wikified. You can learn how to add wiki. We won't do it with this, but other content, you can actually just add double brackets around a thing and it creates a wiki stub.
Oh, cool.
That you can click on to add content later. Table of contents we do like to have.
Okay.
Now, this one currently isn't formatted to make use of it, but hopefully in later revisions will. But by default, go ahead and turn on table of contents.
Okay.
Okay, then go to categorization up along the top there. It's categorization.
Okay.
This is where you put the tags. So in this case, you're going to want to put, and when you start typing, it'll show you a list of existing tabs. So you can just scroll down, like if you just click in there and scroll down and look for tags that you like at first, because at first you don't know what is relevant. But you can also just type in and then see what starts coming up. So in this case, let's see. So let's put deficits. And it looks like there isn't currently.
There is.
What's
wait.
that?
I was like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, so
Got
click on that to add that as a new tag. That will be a new tag. Now in the future, it'll be there. Then you can put benefits. Or benefits. So there's already benefits, so we want to stick with that.
Okay.
And let's see, kind of looking through the other article. You got the history, opposed, prior, Egbert. So we could probably put history in here because this is pretty historical context. Right, some of the others don't really cover the history of it. This one does. Okay, so you can add that as a tag. And any other tags that, as you look through it, and that's why it's good to read it, because that'll help you with that as well.
Yeah.
These tags will make it so much easier. You can always add more tags later. But try to do at least 3 good tags. You're welcome to do more. If this is autism, I'd be putting every variation of autism that we could, things like that. We want to be careful that they're not too jumbled. So if I start typing in autism and I see, why is there should be a tag for that. What the heck? Oh, wow. I keep forgetting how new the site is as far as the content. Because there's several ways to list autism. You can list it as ASD, PDD, autism, etc. So in this case, I want to try to create a catch-all. So let's start with capital A, and then autism.
Okay.
Space ASD space space PDD.
Okay.
And then you can hit enter on that. And now you've created an autism /ASD /PDD tag, which is new. But in the future, when somebody starts type autism, it will use that format of tag.
Okay.
Which is more useful to have the one tag, because then when we create search logic later, we'll have consistent results.
Yes.
And we'll have to go back and clean up our tags and all of this over time. This is always an iterative process. But you see how that works with the tagging, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can see you'll see how valuable that is. Dates, you can set when it will go live or be pulled back to be automated. We pretty much never use that, but if it comes up, you know it's there. Certainly with your blog postings, it's a value. Ownership, you can assign different owners for different purposes. You can put contributors of people in there. So, for example, I would be a contributor because I'm the author. Because this is going to show up under your name since it's logged in as under you, which is fine for the editing. But you would want to put contributor Hawk Robinson in this case. I don't think I have a W because I don't. Yeah. And then the copyright, like rights, you can go ahead and put like it says it's licensed under blah 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 blah. But basically, it's the copyright disclaimer. Most of the time, we're not worrying about that with our content at this point. We've got to come up with what our standard is, and it's kind of all over the place. But especially if it's somebody else's content, you want to put their name in there. Okay. The author's name, because that will definitely. So if this is somebody else's content, contributors, you wouldn't put anything, right? Because they're not us. Because contributors is only local accounts. But rights is whoever the author is, you put it on there, and that will automatically generate a copyright statement. Okay. Which is important. Layout, you don't need to do anything. That's for custom layout. So once you've done that, you can either go back to, I would recommend saving, and then you can go back to it and edit it, and now go back and clean up all the formatting. Okay. So it's now 12 o'clock. That is your first basic edit. So you've saved that. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want it to be live, so let's go ahead and go live. Even though it's a mess, we'll practice this. Oh, come on. Come on. Well, let's see the page. All right. So right now it's not live. Mm-hmm. But you're clicking on it. So on the left, you'll see state. Private. Uh-huh. Oh. Why isn't it giving a pull down? Do I not have permissions? Because. Oh, your name has a typo, doesn't it?
It's okay. I could be Kristen.
No, I can fix that that's under the system level. Oh, weird that's not a.
It's a pull down for me. I can see
okay.
state.
I just had to refresh. I didn't wait long enough. Okay. So now you see publish, submit for publication, advanced policy. Yes. So you can create all kinds of workflows just from there. We're not going to have you do that. For this case, just click on published. For workflow, you can submit for publication, and whoever's on the list would get notified to review your content before it goes public. Okay. Right? Which for your blog postings is exactly what we will be doing, and all future content that isn't a database move. But just go ahead and publish it, and then now it'll show up under the other, should be blue. Yep. And now the general public can see it. Pretty straightforward?
Pretty straightforward.
Okay, so we ask that you try to spend about an hour a week doing that. Okay. Right? In addition to all your other working on the blog posting, just participating in meetings and training, try to spend about a minimum half an hour up to an hour just moving content, cleaning it up, putting those tags. Because if we're all doing that, there are 3,800 original content items on the old server, and only about 500 on the new server. If you count duplicates, we have over 6,000 content items on the old server. Man. So we're trying to weed out the duplicates and clean up the content. This has become completely overwhelming for me because right up until 2015, it was all me. Yeah. And so we need as a team to just chew through all of these. So you've got 2007. I'm going to give you a block. From 2007 through, so it looks like they stopped getting dated properly. Oh, those are Jeff's comments. Oh, interesting. Let's have you go all the way up to 2016. Let's give you that block, 2007 to 2016. Okay. And then beyond that, it looks like it's everybody else's comments, I think. Let me see what page 3 looks like. So that's page 2. Page 3, that's all comments. So that's all the comments that's been moved. Okay, page 4. Oh,
Should I put a comment on the one on the old one?
No, there's some stuff scattered around. Crap. Well, let's start with that. Let's get all of the ones that do have a date, and then we'll have to weed through the others. But yeah, 2007 through 2016, go ahead, and that's your block that you're assigned.
Okay.
Over the next weeks. You don't have to have it all done in a week or anything like that. That's just keep chewing away at that a little bit at a time. Small blows fell great trees.
Put a comment on the old site that it's...
Once you have copied it over and you've finished, then on the left, thank you for reminding me, on the left, put a comment that says this has now been moved, and that's, and your name, which it should be automatically posted, but yeah. Then that's all you do. You do that, you submit it as a comment, and that will let other people know that it's already been moved.
Okay.
So they can just click through. And meanwhile, I'm going to fix your name. Hopefully that didn't affect... Man, I hope I didn't script your username that way.
I've been called all kinds of things, so...
Well, it's totally a typo.
No, I know. It's...
Okay, yeah, it didn't affect your username. That's just your full name. I just got the T in the wrong place. My bad. All right. And as far as username goes... Yeah, okay, you went under strange anyway, so that's fine. All right, so now in the future, it'll all, on all the pages, it'll show up correctly. I fixed that easily.
One other random
Please.
English person question.
Please.
If I notice any typos as I'm reading, do you want me to fix them?
I wouldn't. We will worry about that kind of revisioning. You could get really bogged down doing that.
Okay.
So just worry about the formatting, like just the layout that is readable. We'll live with the existing typos because that's the version number that it is. I have a revision process that when I go through and clean things and update them, we add a revision tag. So we say it becomes version G or whatever. So we want to keep track of those because I use fixing typos as a chance to also just bring the document up to date.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Add new links, things like that. So the original authors should do that. Now, that's for our original content. We have a process. If you see typos in the other people's stuff that are really glaring, and again, I wouldn't get bogged down on it. But if you see it, a few here and there you want to fix, go for it. No big deal.
Okay.
But be very careful. If you just think it's a misspelling, it might be British spelling versus U.S. spelling. Be careful not to change that.
Yeah, no.
Watch out for that. S's and Z's are a big one.
I've just been missing commas and...
Yeah, I mean, well, I wouldn't go that far because commas, unfortunately, people don't agree between the Oxford comma or not the Oxford comma.
Yeah, and it depends on what version you're using for publication standards.
And how old we are. Yeah, well, we're APA, and Katie and I are both pro Oxford comma, so we like using commas with the list with the comma before the and if it's a listed items thing. And there are legal reasons for that too. You can lose lawsuits because of the wrong comma, combining the two or not combining the two. But it's weird. I got in a big argument with the English teacher at EWU about this. And I'm like, but it's wrong. If you don't put a comma there, it means you're putting the two together. Well, no, that's not the way we do it anymore. That's antiquated. I'm like, it's wrong. It means you've paired the two items if you don't separate it with a comma and show that it's a list. In a lawsuit, you would lose your lawsuit because of the and without a comma, depending upon what you were trying to argue. Anyway, I'm glad you're on board with us on that.
Oh, yeah,
everything is meant to be APA format, but the other people's stuff come from all kinds of formats. So we don't worry about changing their format because they'll come from LA and Chicago and many others. And some of them, are from 50 years ago. So that's all changed. Yeah. Our content, yes, we try to keep modern APA standards. Everything we do, even our blog postings, without, again, getting bogged down, we write it in APA. So a citation style is APA. and our references are APA. We try to follow all the APA standards. Okay?
Easy enough.
All right. Any questions before we wrap it up?
No questions.
All right. So yeah, at your leisure, go through. I think you'll find, some interesting reading. Some of you may have already read, but hopefully you'll find lots of new stuff that inspire you. Now, there is no rush on your blog posting. However, some people like to get in that right away, and you are welcome to do so when you feel ready.
Okay.
Some people want to start writing their first blog posting the first month. Others want to take 2 or 3 months before they feel they've got their feet under them enough and how busy they are. So let me know at the next meeting where you're feeling on that if you're getting excited. Now, here's the other thing I tell everybody. As you're reading through these and you get excited by whatever you're reading, have another window open or a piece of paper, if that's what you prefer, to write down the thoughts being triggered as you read it.
Yes.
They don't have to be cohesive paragraphs or sentences, just even a bullet list of ideas to come back to and save that file.
Yes.
In a folder that says, my research ideas or my reading ideas or whatever. And as you're constantly learning all this stuff, as you learn through our learning program, as you go through lectures, as you participate, as you do programs on your own, start capturing, just get in the habit of capturing all your thoughts. Mm-hmm. This will help you for decades.
Yes.
Right? Stuff I captured back in 2004, it took 10 years to come to fruition, but if I hadn't captured it, I don't know if it ever would have. So it's a habit. Astronomers are supposed to write down everything they observe all the time in a detailed log. I want all of us to be in that habit of, as we notice these thoughts and ideas and such, capture them and go through them periodically. It will really help you over time.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you so much for making it. The advantage of you being the only one today is we're able to go through and do a lot of this one-on-one. What is your planned attendance schedule? Just Sundays at this point?
Yeah, Sundays at this point. And then the admin meeting every other Monday.
Will you only be doing the research meetings, or will you be participating in some of the games or the theory?
So I am revising my prospectus to continue on with my dissertation journey. Mm-hmm. As soon as my prospectus revision's done, I plan on being a little bit more reactive, okay. More active.
Engaged, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
engaged, number one.
I mean, just with like my grandmother dying suddenly, and now I'm on a conference circuit, having to go everywhere, and
I'm sorry about your loss. Were you close?
Yeah, so there was only 3 of us left in the entire family, and it was my grandmother, my brother, and I, and I mean, we knew she was in her 90s. We knew it was gonna happen. It was just...
Wow, YouTube has gone down. Is the stream even working? I can't, my whole YouTube thing, it's saying, sorry, we can't log in at this time. Please try again later. Like the chat shut down and everything.
Well, YouTube.
I can't sign in or anything. I've got an oops page now.
Well, it's still saying you're live.
Okay. Yeah, I can't log into the live stream dashboard. It keeps giving me an oops. Interesting. Huh. Well, I'm glad it's still, I mean, we record locally, so we always have a backup because we do not trust any of the online stuff at all.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so no, I know you got on, so you know what our schedule is, right? You know the schedule page?
Yes, and I actually have the Google Calendar saved as part of my Google, because I'm a Google person. Everything's on Google for me.
Okay, we're trying to get away from that as far as once our platform has everything working, that it'll all be self-contained there. Especially when we start doing research, there's so many privacy issues with Google.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to do HIPAA audits, so I'm trying to make all of our servers HIPAA compliant.
Okay. Yeah, I have the times and everything saved on my Google Calendar. Good. Just I can keep track of it.
Cool. All right. Well, you feel free to email me the list, whatever you need. If you have any questions or challenges, just let me know. That should hopefully keep you going until we see you next time.
Yeah, I will be around.
Okay, and it looks like I won't be able to stop the stream because I can't sign in to stop it. I mean, I can stop on this end, but the Weird. All right. Well, you have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
All right. Catch you later.
Bye.
And those of you who are tuned in, thank you for joining us. We can't view the chat or anything. It's barfed on my end. Sorry about that. Feel free to comment on the video. All of these videos are available to our Patreon supporters live to everybody. The recorded versions are sent to our Patreon supporters, available to them for a month, and eventually they become available to the public on our youtube.com/RPGresearch channel. So if you'd like to get early access to all these essays, blog postings, etc., a month or more before the general public, do please consider supporting our 501c3 nonprofit, RPG Research, studying the effects of all role-playing game formats and their potential to help improve lives at rpgresearch.com/donate, PayPal, Amazon Smile, or Patreon special access. Wherever you may be well. Happy audio.